Hi there, I'm James from Outside. We're in our shop today and we're in what we call the heart of the shop, the boot room. No matter how quiet the rest of the shop can be, it's always buzzing in here. And today I'm going to tell you about some of my favourite things, winter boots and the crampons that go with them. So just a real quick overview. We had an idea of doing a video called How to Fit Your Crampons, and I thought I can't really do that without telling you about the different types of crampons and the boots that go with them and when you might need them. So here I've got some classic examples. Obviously we do loads of different boots and crampons for all different sizes, shapes, fits and things that you're doing, but this is a real good little overview. When someone says crampons, I instantly think of this type of thing. However, you can get those micro spikes that we've already done videos on, and they're great for black ice and running on that sort of terrain. But if you're actually going into the mountains and you're possibly going up gullies and on ridges, and it's quite serious if you slip, this is the way to go. Now, like I say, there's a huge range out there and loads we could talk about, and I'll try not to go on forever, but we're going to cover the basics and we're going to go from walking sort of crampons right up to the most technical climbing and everything in between. So quickly trying to explain what each crampon does and the boot that would go with it. So it's a bit of an old school traditional thing, having this B rating and a C rating. Not everybody uses it. In fact, it was invented by Brian Hall with Scarpa and Gravel, but actually everyone took it on board, and we still stick by it quite heavily here in the UK. So what that means, I've got 3 different boots here, 3 different crampons, and we would give them all a different rating. So I have a B1 boot, a B2 boot, and a B3 boot, and each one is wearing the right crampon. So I have a C1 crampon, a C2 crampon, and a C3 crampon. But if you're brand new to being out in the mountains in winter, how are you supposed to know what you're doing? So that's what we're here to talk about. So starting down here, a B1 boot. A B1 boot is basically a walking boot, a 4-season walking boot that you can go and do any terrain in, and it really excels in winter. It usually has a really good, big, thick tread on it, really quite stiff and really supportive. Now that's great in the mountains, particularly in winter. Even if you're not wearing a crampon, it will excel just on sort of the softer snow early on your trek or climb or whatever you're doing, but also it will take you a little bit further and it will wear a crampon. So the reason a B1 boot, or what we'd class as one, will take a crampon versus another chunky looking walking boot is often to do with the stiffness. The sole has to be pretty stiff and also not just sort of flex this way the way we walk, but also torsionally, because apparently crampons come off that way. So we're in the B1 category here. I've got an ultra classic. This is the Malastang from Altberg. That's a firm favourite with our staff and our customers. It's a really good 4-season walking boot, and that's got really good tread and also takes a crampon really nicely. So I've got that there to show you that it can look like a traditional leather boot. A lot more modern things like the Scarpa Zodiac TRK here will look a bit more like an alpine style boot, and it will do a similar job. But just showing you how sort of they're pretty stiff. I would walk around in those in the Peak District, but also it's great to know I can get a crampon on them if I need. Now what you'll often notice with a B1 boot is it will take a crampon, but there doesn't look anywhere obvious to take it, i.e. you don't have a welt at the back to clip anything on, nothing at the front either, and that's what makes this a C1 crampon that fits on a B1 boot. And here we have it, a C1 crampon, probably the most classic of them all. This is the Gravel G10 New Classic. And as you can see here, the bales are sort of soft and they strap to the boot rather than click to the boot. That's because it hasn't got anywhere to actually clip it in. It hasn't got a welt. So that's really good for when you're walking. You would use a crampon on a boot like this in winter when it's predominantly walking. You're probably not taking a harness, probably not even taking a rope. You might have a single axe. And the plan is you're walking in the mountains and you may get on some icy and snowy terrain, but you also may have to go up an easy-ish gully or on a ridge or somewhere where it nearly feels like climbing. And so you need to be secure and you need to stick to the snow and the ice. You also throughout the day predominantly are walking. So a crampon like this will fit on the walking boot, and also it will give a little bit. So both these front and back fixings sort of move a little bit in the boot. It's not going to come off, but that means it's a bit easier to flex your foot and walk. If you're going for a crampon like this, do make sure that the bar is right as well. So this is the link bar in the middle, which you use to adjust the length. We'll get to that in a bit. And they often have a little bit of give in them because we're trying to walk in these and maybe kick a front point sometimes. You'll notice that the points aren't super aggressive. They're not really sharp and pointy. And that's because if they are, actually walking them is a bit grim. You're always catching your foot and tripping over and, rolling your ankle. So this will walk around a little bit easier, yet still grip just when you need it. You'll notice as well the front points are more like paddles, as I call it, because it's for softer snow and you're trying not to dig all the way through it. Whereas when you get to climbing, I like to call them like daggers. We'll get to that. Again, not super sharp because you don't want them too sharp. You'll end up having to sharpen them all the time and blunten them down. So they're really durable like that. But this, of course, has its limitations. If you are climbing in them, there's just too much give in there. You'll be slopping off footholds, feeling really insecure, but it's great for just moving in the mountains. So C1 crampon, B1 boot. A lot of similarities are going to go through all the crampons here, but I'll quickly show you. Obviously, boots and crampons come in different sizes, so you'll need to adjust it for your foot length. Usually they're all pretty similar and it's quite simple to do. You can lift up this little handle here and slide the link bar up and down until it feels like it's going to fit your boot correctly. Also, you'll find that helps you shrink it when you're going to shove it in your bag and pack it away. Do bear in mind, if you've got really big feet, probably sort of 11 upwards, you may well need to get an extra long link bar because it won't quite fit. So do check with your crampon and your foot size whether you can get away with a normal link bar. So as I've already mentioned before, this can be called a strap-on crampon or a step-in crampon, which I should have mentioned because of course you step into it. Quite simply, that looks like it fits, doesn't it? So what we're looking for is that the fact that your toes poking through the front of the basket there, you can see the points, they're sticking out in front if you've got a kick and there's not too much dead space and all these points are going to come into play. Similar at the back, make sure that these little metal bits sticking up here sort of fit really securely to the heel of the boot so that again, there's not too much rattling around, not too much at play. Now the strap on a crampon like this is really important because it's not going to clunk like the others. So it is this strap that's holding you in place. Last thing you want is one of these falling off at that important moment. So I'll show you the way I would normally do it. You do have variations on this, but you've got a big long strap. Don't cut this down too soon. I'll explain why in a minute. And I would go over the top of the boot and thread it through the other welt on the other side, pull it nice and snug. Now that helps actually pull you back into the heel as well, which is quite nice, particularly if you are climbing or you don't want to get heel lift with your heavier boots. Then of course, thread to the front, which you need to do because that toe is not going to get held in on its own, and pull it nice and secure, and you can see that's going to be held really well in place. Now, as you can imagine, we've got the buckle here, and a bit like most harnesses these days, go through both and then just back through one. Pull it really snug so it holds everything in place. Now, loads of excess. Don't get tempted to cut that down too soon, because trying to do these up with big thick gloves in the real cold, if you've only got a little bit left, it can feel absolutely desperate and really fiddly. So you nearly want some excess. Admittedly, this is a small boot. I might cut a little bit off, but don't go too far and don't go too soon. So with the excess, again, lots of different options what you can do. Some people like tucking it straight round back in here. Some people do knots in it. Some people do what I'm about to here and sort of thread it round and round and round and then back on itself, a bit like finishing your stopping up when you're climbing, and it just keeps it out of the way. Now try and make sure you keep that on the outside of your boot, because if you have it on the inside, you're way more likely to trip on it. It doesn't look very pretty, but it does the job. Again, if there's any excess left, tuck it in down here. It's not going to get in the way. There we go. So then moving on to B2 boots and C2 crampons. This area can be the most confusing because some of them can feel as soft as a B1 and some of them can feel as stiff as a B3, yet they all have different characteristics. What you'll notice with B2 boots is they have an actual welt at the back here. So that allows you to put a proper clip-on crampon on the back, but the front still doesn't have a welt, so you actually have to have that basket style clip at the front. So these sort of boots range from summer alpine to Scottish winter walking to maybe getting into colder conditions in the Alps and certainly in Scotland as well. So I'll get some that feel light and nimble but still nice and stiff and really good for climbing in, and others which would be quite a lot heavier, lots more insulation for the colder conditions. Because just picture it, you're walking along a glacier in the Alps in summer, it can actually be really hot, but you need that solid boot so you can take a crampon, you can climb out of a crevasse if it goes wrong, you can actually get to your route as well and maybe climb it, and you need it to be stiff and precise and stand on those small edges. So again, we've got a couple of classics here, sort of light and nimble feeling with the Trango Alpine, but also a proper workhorse with the Scarpa Manta. Now this is obviously warmer and chunky and probably more durable, but it's also a bit heavier and feels less nice to climb in. So again, they vary. This is probably the most popular area because, like I say, summer in the Alps, glaciers, things like that, moving in the hills in Scotland, yet you can climb pretty hard. I mean, some people climb really hard routes, and obviously I won't recommend that now, but you can because they feel precise, they're stiff enough and take the crampon really securely. The boots are generally a bit stiffer than something like the B1s, but what they do often have is a bit more of a rocker. So that's the sort of scoop in the sole, and that allows you to walk a little bit better and easier than maybe a flatter and more stiff B3 boot. So these are used year round in the Alps and a lot in the winter in Scotland, hence a really popular area. I generally reckon you could climb sort of up to grade 3, 4 in these in Scotland without much trouble. Obviously people have climbed harder things, but generally after that you'll move on to a B3. The joy is though, you could just walk around them as well. I can quite happily go for a walk in a B2 boot because I'm quite heavy and I quite like a stiff boot. So when people refer to the crampons, if we were looking at, say, the C1 we were just talking about, people might call that a manual crampon or a strap-on because you've got to strap both ends. If you have a B3, sort of step in the front and clip at the back, and people call that a fully automatic crampon. And that means with a C2 crampon, people call it a semi-automatic, so you've got to step in at the front and then clip at the back. So the reason they're like this is you can climb a lot harder in these. If you have the play and ease of walking like from a C1 crampon and B1 boot, there's too much play in there. If you're climbing and your heel's lifting and slopping out of it, that's really insecure. You want to be held in really secure in these so you can stand on those edges and climb, yet still walk a bit. You'll notice the boots will be stiffer, as will the crampons. This isn't a flexi bar anymore. It still has the paddle-like points at the front, but you'll notice they're a lot sharper, so they will kick into the snow and ice better and excel you into sort of the easier ice grades and certainly into the easier mixed routes. So C2 crampon, B2 boot, a lot of things are the same. You can adjust the bar the same to make sure it's the right length, but obviously strapping it on is going to be a little bit different. Got the step in at the front and the clip at the back. So toe goes in at the front, same as before, and then heel, make sure it's nice and snug at the back, but you'll see this big solid clip at the back. Now you want a real solid clunk. It can be quite hard to do. It's particularly hard when you're not wearing them, like demonstrating now is quite hard. When you're wearing them, it's actually a little bit easier, but make sure it's really solid because you want that to be really secure. Now, as you can see, even before I do the strap, that's pretty well in place. Obviously, we're going to do the strap because we don't want it to fall off. So with this one, I'll do it a little bit different. I'll just go straight to the front, through that toe basket, and then back through the buckle at the back. And it's same again, through both, and then back through one. Again, you can finish off this the same as last time, but do make sure with this one it's a bit more secure than you might do with a C1 and a B1 and all that, because you're going to be climbing. You want to see those points, you need to be on those edges, and it's a bit more important how you feel and how secure you are with these. Now, one last thing to think about, I haven't got time to show you this, you might get a bit bored, but you'll notice you've got different holes at the front and back on these crampons. You can't do it with the others, they're riveted in. So a little bit more adjustment in a more modern crampon like this. So if they aren't fitting perfectly out of the box, you can actually move the bail forward or back, so you can have more points sticking out or a bit less, and the same at the back here, just to get a really, really good fit. When you want to remove or change those bails, it's pretty hard to do, they're really hard. A little tip is to get your strap you've got, push it underneath, and actually, I won't do it now because I'm going to take my eye out, put it down the floor, put your foot in it maybe, and pull hard at that strap. It's much easier doing that than trying to grab this, and then you'll get it out the hole, move into the other one, nice and easy. So then that moves us into B3 boots and C3 crampons. Now what you'll notice when you get here is it's all about climbing. Walking in these is fine, but it's not ideal because often the boot is really flat, so it takes the crampon really well and stands on an edge really well. Next to no give, they're nearly fully solid. There's sometimes a little bit of play, but really, really solid. And they'll often have quite a lot more insulation because you know you're going to be climbing in colder conditions. So we're talking ice, often getting to the point of nearly feeling vertical, and mixed routes with vertical sections or all fully vertical. Now you want it like that because you're going to put that little point into a little crack or a little bit of ice. You want to feel like you're stood on a platform, so that's why it needs to be fully rigid. Again, B3 boots can vary quite a lot. There's been some really light boots out there recently with next to no insulation. They feel amazing when you're climbing the hardest mixed routes, but if you're going somewhere really cold, they just simply won't be warm enough. And then you've got the sort of mid-range where there's enough insulation for ice climbing, Scottish winter, things like that. You can get into double skin boots, which are great for 6,000 meter peaks and some of the colder technical climbing in the Alps. And then of course, you see the big guys behind me going up 8,000 meter peaks. Really, really warm, Everest, all that type of thing. They're all B3 boots. What you'll notice with all B3 boots is you've got a little ledge or welt at the front and at the back, so you can take that fully automatic crampon, which will just clip in really securely, a bit like wearing a ski boot really, and clipping into a binding. It's going to stay on there really, really secure without too much straps and buckles in the way. So then you've got the toe bail of the crampon, which is different to all the others, which is just a wire across the front there. So you can put that welt in, clip it up at the back, really secure, not messy at all, because you want this to feel technical and precise and just clip in really nicely. You'll notice all the points get way sharper. Basically, these are built for climbing. They're actually pretty grim to walk in. Often when I finish the route and you've got to leave them on a bit longer, I wish I wasn't wearing them. You feel like you're catching everything, going to roll your ankles, stuff like that. But the climbing has worked really well. And that's where it's hard to decide which would be right for you on the day. You'll also notice with a lot of crampons, something like the dart we've got here, comes with a mono point. You can easily make it into a dual point. Jury's out about what's right. A lot of people like a mono point for mixed climbing, so it might be a thin little crack. A lot of people like dual points for ice climbing, it's a bit more stable. Some people talk each way about both of them. But these look way more like ice axes. They're like dagger points. They've changed the angle so they've cut straight into the ice or stand on that little edge if you're mixed climbing, but they're not as wide and they'll make you sink through soft snow much quicker than you would do if you're in a B2 or C2 crampon and boot. And then another thing that changes is that they're interchangeable front points, because you wear through these a lot quicker. You need to keep them sharp, so you like often sharpening them and filing them, so they'll wear down and they're replaceable. Another thing you can really notice when you're looking at the bottom of this is it actually hasn't covered the whole boot. So if you are walking around, it doesn't always feel that great, but that keeps the weight down and makes them really good for climbing, so you're only ever on the points anyway. If you wanted something a bit wider, you could get something like the Lynx, which is maybe more of an all-rounder, but I feel the darts feel great for that technical climbing. It's quite often important to look where the secondary points come. You kind of want those to be in line with the front of the boot, so when you put that on, it feels like you're stood on the edge. Hopefully that's sunk in all the way, and you look down and that feels like your toe on an edge if you're normally rock climbing, and the same happens when you're winter climbing. So C3 crampon, B3 boot, really similar to the B2. However, we've got this different bail at the front and the different welt here. So obviously you're going to step it in, as you can expect, like a ski boot. Make sure that heel's really snug at the back and get that reassuring clunk. Now, some of you clever clogs might have noticed I've done something a little bit different with the strap. I thought you don't want to see me tying that up for a third time. It's a little thing I quite like to do here now, because I found over the years it's extremely hard trying to do these up while my hands are freezing. I've just done the walk-in, you're at the gearing up spot. I'm Baltic and I can't do that fiddliness. So actually, I've got into the habit now of leaving the strap a little bit done up, but as loose as it can come, so I can step in just like that, do it up, and actually the threading's already been done, so I can pop it over the top and just tighten it. And I find that a lot easier to do in gloves than trying to rethread all that. Little tip there for you. Once again, when you're looking here, you can move this back and forth just so you can have more point, less point, however you like it really. But generally, like I say, at the front of your toe, you want those secondary points so you feel nice and secure. And again, same at the back, make sure it fits really nicely and really securely in the heel. These are climbing crampons. The last thing you want is any play when you're in that quite extreme conditions. So while that might have felt like quite a lengthy video, maybe a bit boring for you to watch, apologies for that. Actually, that was a real whistle-stop tour. I've got so many variations on all the crampons, all the boots, all the different ways you can do it, the adjustments and the fit, but you've got to start somewhere. If you want way more advice, please come in the shop. We've got people who go to the Himalayas, hard Scottish winter routes, walking, everything like that. They know what they're doing. Or give us a call. And if you've got any other ideas and little videos we could have done that would help, please put them in the comments. Anyway, that was quite good fun doing, and I hope we get some snow and ice this winter.